Good afternoon, and welcome to Bethesda Has Got News for You. Today you will be listening to broadcasts on the Tulsa riot, the immigration quota, and the Sacco and Vanzetti trial. So please gather your family, friends, and or pets, because boy do we have news for you.
For the next news report, I'm going to be telling you about the Tulsa race riot that lasted from May 31st to June 1st and took place in the predominantly African American neighborhood of Greenwood in Tulsa, Oklahoma. According to sources, an African American man named Dick Rowland entered an elevator of a building that had a white woman called Sarah Page as the operator. And suddenly her screams were heard from outside, and Rowland was seen escaping the building. White Tulsans believe that Rowland attempted to assault Page, but this hasn't been confirmed as of now. However, this rumor spread among the neighborhood, and the next day Rowland was arrested and an investigation began. An inflammatory report in the May 31st edition of the Tulsa Tribune triggered a confrontation between the black and white armed mobs around the courthouse, where the sheriff and his men had barricaded the top floor to protect Rowland. Shots were fired, and the outnumbered African Americans began retreating to the Greenwood district. On June 1st, Greenwood was looted and burned down by white rioters. Thousands were killed, and many more were left homeless. However, Tulsa has always been a troubled town. Last year, in August 1920, there was a case of lynching by a white mob of a white teenager who was accused of murder. He was abducted from his jail cell and lynched to death. News reports confirm that the police did very little to stop the lynching, and the accused didn't face any charges. Tulsa has always been plagued with vigilantism, and instances like these have made the neighborhood very unsafe for African Americans. The county has begun several relocation plans for the displaced African Americans, and Tulsans have already begun the long and arduous process of rebuilding Greenwood. Our condolences are with Tulsans, and the county is doing everything they can to make the neighborhood safe for them again. Thank you, and I'll be back with more news next week.
The refreshing sound of Coca-Cola, the drink that refreshes you. Available now at your local supermarket for only $1, or you can get a new pack of 6 to spare you a trip tomorrow or for your house party this evening for only $5.50.
Well, folks, a new act that was signed by President Warren Harding on May 19th is the Immigration Quota Act, also known as the Emergency Immigration Act, referred to as the Immigration Restriction Act, Percentum Law, and Johnson Quota Act, sponsored by the Representative Albert Johnson. For some, this might be great news, but for others, this means let's blouse. A common port of destination for immigrants from Europe is Ellis Island in Upper New York, but one must also understand that immigrants are coming here because of the events in World War I, for religious freedom, better economic opportunities, a better quality of life, awful leaders in other countries. And isn't this supposed to be the land of the free? People are generalizing immigrants and are blaming them for unfortunate events such as the Red Scare, moral welfare of the nation, radical socialists, communism, anarchists, or just not respecting their cultural beliefs. Immigrants and non-Caucasian are endangered due to this and are being provoked with anti-immigration act hysteria, civil rights unrest, strikes, and riots such as the Black Wall Street of America. Here's a short film captured by pictures from the Black Wall Street being burnt down in Tulsa this year.
The violence broke out when a white lynch mob clashed with blacks who were protecting a black man accused of assaulting a white elevator operator. Over 2 days, white mobs set fire to homes, businesses, and churches in Greenwood, a thriving African-American business district known at the time as the Black Wall Street of America.
When the smoke cleared, the area lay in ruins. Many African Americans left and never returned. The National Guard rounded up thousands of African Americans, held them at various locations around Tulsa. The U.S. Army, in what's believed the first time, bombed Black Wall Street.
There is now a restricted limit of number of immigrants coming to the U.S. from certain countries. Per year, 3% of the number of residents from that country already in the U.S. would be allowed in from 1910. How it came down to this, you might be asking yourself? Well, between 1901 and 1920, over 14 million immigrants overflooded America, and this did not please many American citizens, especially the KKK and nationalists that wanted to keep America American. Countries that are limited are discriminated by this law. They are mostly from Eastern and Southern Europe. The only non-Americans that are not applicable to this are government officials and their families, tourists and temporary workers, immigrants from Western Hemisphere, children of U.S. citizens, any country with bilateral agreements with the United States on immigration, and people from the Western Hemisphere. Here is a small cartoon referencing to this occurrence. Now we are asking you, is this the right thing for Congress to do?
Is your icebox unreliable? Does the ice in it melt too quickly? Does your food get warm and stale quickly? Well, don't fret. Buy an electric refrigerator. It can keep your food cold as long as you need it to, and you don't have to rely on the iceman to deliver ice that melts so much before you can use it. Buy now for only $15 at your local convenience store.
For today's broadcast, we will also be talking about the Sacco and Vanzetti trial, which has turned out to catch the eye of the whole nation. It was May 1917, and Sacco and Vanzetti met in Boston in a meeting of anarchists. But before continuing, I must explain to you who anarchists are and what they truly believe in. Anarchists believe that they should have the freedom to control themselves without any type of hierarchy or government looking over them. Mostly immigrants came with this idea because they came to America to seek freedom from their oppressive governments back home. Apart from this belief, though, the group of anarchists in Boston truly believe that the economy should be controlled by the people, and that the people should distribute the money equally to everyone in the nation and among themselves. But of course, this has not been the case up until now. Anarchists believe that the government of the U.S. is also very repressive like their own governments, and apart from this, that the government also favors the rich. Therefore, anarchists would commit terrorist attack against not only the rich, but also those that were involved in the persecution of anarchists, their fellow mates, and would commit these crimes as a manner of vengeance. But one day, there occurred a special terrorist attack. It was April 15, 1920, and a group of anarchists were committing one of their planned terrorist attack against the Slater and Morrill Shoe Company. The group also knew that there would be a pair of employees with a payroll which contained $15,776.51. Once the group of anarchists reached the site of the company, they began shooting both employees and civilians that were either in or near the building of the company. They also stole the payroll and finally escaped in a car. But in order to lose anyone that was following them, they switched into another car and escaped. What was extremely alarming about this crime, though, was that not only did they attack those that may have been guilty, but they also attacked the innocent, which really catch the government's eye. As a result, the police began detaining anyone who may have seemed like a communist, socialist, anarchist, or an immigrant that seemed suspicious. Suspects say that they saw two men of Italian descent committing the crime and escaping in the car, and when they were asked to identify the men, they picked Sacco and Vanzetti. On September 11, 1920, both Sacco and Vanzetti were accused of murder, with the evidence that they had been identified by witnesses at the event and that they were probably against the U.S. government because they had avoided going on the draft and serving their country in the First Modern War, also known as World War I. As soon as they were accused of murder, though, the protests and riots immediately started against this conviction. Just 5 days after this conviction, a bomb was set off by Sacco and Vanzetti's friend as an act of vengeance against this prosecution, but it killed approximately 30 people, injured more than 200, and caused more than $2 million in property damage. The court then accepted the case, and the trial commenced. We can almost safely imply that there was a lot of prejudice involved in this trial, since they were immigrants, specifically Italian, meaning they were associated with gangs. And by having this prejudice in mind, the justice system most likely could not see a reason. Most likely could not see a reason for why these two Italian anarchists would not be guilty of this crime. But throughout this case, so far, Sacco and Vanzetti have declared that they are innocent, but the justice system says they are guilty. This whole trial, we have associated Sacco and Vanzetti as being two friends in the end that must have gotten along well to be able to accomplish this attack and managed to escape for some time. But in reality, they barely knew each other and rarely saw each other outside of court. Our latest information on the case has been that both Sacco and Vanzetti were found guilty of murder by the jury. They have not been sentenced yet, though. Many protests and riots have continued against the prosecution and verdict of the jury, but we have heard rumors of the lawyers fighting to open another case. But we will have to wait to hear what the judge has to say about this. Thank you for listening and having a roaring day.